I'm constantly getting requests for great quilts for men, and so I busted out my sketchbook one day and started drafting up a fun half-square triangle quilt and had so much fun, I've turned it into what we're calling the Reflective Stars. Check this thing out. You ready to get started? So here's the before and after, and not only that, a good invitation down into the description below to get your printable for today's workshop. But this is that sketchbook I was playing within, and like I said, having a blast creating this. Now this project behind me, I was thinking of a full quilt, but of course you can see by that cool narrow center strip, this would be a fantastic table runner project as well. The quilt finish is 90 inches tall by 60 inches wide, 89 by 59, but I like to round up. But so you can see that would be a fantastic table runner as well. So for today's project, however, what I'm using is some solid brown and some solid blue Kona cotton, because I'm also using the Kona Artisan Batiks from Robert Kaufman, and we're gonna need one of these little 5x5 squares, and I need about 154, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, squares in the background, and I'm gonna get 4 half square triangles for every grouping that I make. So the first thing I do need to do is make those groupings. So I'm just gonna come across here really quick, and I'm gonna group this Batik 5x5 pack into color families. And I'm using all of the same fabrics in my piles, and I'm thinking of browns, and then I'm gonna get down into my blues. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick constantly some high and low or dark and light fabrics to make up my squares. And I have mixed brown and brown, so dark brown and light brown. I mixed dark blue and light blue, and then I mixed my browns and my blues together. As you'll see here in a second, I'm almost done. And I had a few left over, so I did decide to go ahead and omit the almost black ones. I needed 1 square, but not all of them. So if you look over on the ironing station here, you can see that I left a few extra out. Okay, so now how did I marry these though? So what I did is I took a light brown and a, let's say like this, a super dark brown. Take those 2 squares, set them together, come to the next one, light here, that's got a little bit of a green hue to it as well, so I'm gonna put those together. Okay, same with my blues, right? I've got a light blue and a dark blue. We're gonna join those up and stack them with my light sides up. But then also there's gonna be a time where you can take a brown here and a blue as well, and just gonna go through all of your colors, and it's very, very random to kind of get that wonderful stained glass effect you see happening behind me there. So I build all of my squares up, and when I have, and let's use these for really good contrast for today's video, let's set those over there and tidy up here. We're gonna use the Jenny Doan half square triangle method so that every 2 of these 5-inch squares will yield us 4 half square triangles. Okay, so we've got those. Now the next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm going to, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm just gonna line these up. I've got my seam guide, so I'm running my pinked edges right along that seam edge. And I'm gonna sew all the way down and off the square. I'm gonna rotate back into that 1/4 inch format, putting a little pressure out here to keep it from puckering. Rotate again. I just love making my half square triangles this way. It is so easy. And my last seam here, okay? Now, as we come over here to our cutting space, right? The next thing I want to do is I'm going to have my small, easy to handle ruler and cutter, but first I want to go ahead, and people have been asking me in some of the comments on my other video, how do I handle the bulk when I'm piecing? Well, this is one of the ways I handle the bulk when I'm piecing, is when making these half square triangles this way, I take the time to cut off all of those little corners, or technically what they call dog earing the corners here, so that my block will have less bulk in the corners. And then I'm gonna lay my ruler from the cross of the threads to the cross of the threads. So where the threads met like this, and then I'm gonna slice here once, and I'm not gonna move anything. I'm gonna peel this ruler up. I'm gonna drop it right back down through the thread cross, and I'm gonna slice here like yay. And now we're ready because we're going to have 4 of these awesome light and dark combo half square triangles. Now, just simply grab your light piece of fabric. Am I saying that right? I'm going to press to the dark side and all of a sudden my brain is playing tricks on me. Grab your dark piece of fabric. I do it all day long. You'd think I'd remember this stuff, right? So hanging onto your dark fabric, drop your light fabric here, and then that way as I go to crease out, look what happens. See that? I'm pushing right to the dark side of the triangle, okay? So we're gonna do that and do that with all of your squares, all of your half square triangles, get them all built up. And then what I want you to do is I want you to stack them like I've done here. And as I have them stacked, I have all of the dark sides of the triangles facing the same direction and in the same location. Because what we're going to do now together is we're going to build the background of this reflecting stars and stripes one row at a time. This is not put together in blocks. So again, in the link in that description below, I have for you this wonderful printout that shows the layout of the quilt, but it also shows you the row by row by row as we're going to assemble this. Okay, so I'm going to start at the bottom on row number 1, and I'm going to take a half square triangle and I'm going to set it because it's got the dark looking this way, and then I don't want ever to have the same fabrics touching, so at this moment I'm just going to break that pile apart and I'm going to grab another one, and in that one I'm laying it out here. Then I don't want to use those ones again, so I'll come down here to maybe a brown, and this one here is showing me that this corner goes this way. Like yay. And after I do the entire layout of the project, then I go back around and I use my eyes and I look through the quilt to make sure that these fabrics are never the same touching each other. I don't mind if they're on opposite sides of the block, but I don't want them touching because it'll form a new shape that we don't want to happen. Okay, let me grab one last square and follow along here. And that dark angle goes this way. Now I've built the bottom row number 1, and it doesn't matter if you start at top or bottom, just as long as you can keep managed. But then at this point, what I like to do is I like to take a piece of paper or something and I cover that up. So I'm only looking now at row number 2. So then I'm going to come in here and grab some more fabrics. In row number 2, I've got a dark one pointing out to that side, but look, it's the same exact fabric. Just what I was saying I didn't want to happen. So I just return that to the pile, dig down a little bit deeper, and I find a piece like that that is giving me exactly what I'm after. Again, and I did that on purpose for you so I could make the point. Those are okay touching close to each other, just not touching edge to edge, because you will, like I said, get a different shape starting to form. Then I come through here, and as I work, I also continue to just keep my piles. I keep rebuilding my piles, and what that does is it organically keeps feeding me new colors as I go through. Okay, so I'm going to build this one here, again following my designs, and at the very end, before we sew any of our rows or columns together, I want to make sure I look around the entire quilt, and at that point I'm going to go ahead and balance out what I am looking at as far as the weight of the colors, the girth of the design goes. Okay, and then I've got that little point, and I finished the second row, so then I'll cover up the second row or put a red line through it or something like that. These are free printables. You can print more. You can share them with your friends. But once all of the layout is built and everything is just as I want it, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare to go to the sewing machine. One group of 5 half square triangles at a time. So I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be the last one I sew. So I'm stacking these up, and you notice I'm keeping them all on the seam side, right? But then this seam side here is going to go like this together, and this was my seam side, so I can lay this here. And then I had a little mistake early on, as you can see. I got it caught in the stitch plate because I wasn't paying attention. Wasn't holding my thread tails, really, is what happened there. Got pulled in, so I cut it out, and I've used it now as my mental marker, because some half square triangle quilts, all the points are heading one direction. But in this, to get the design, the points are heading in all different directions. So I've made myself this little cheat sheet. So then I lay these on here and I leave it at my sewing machine. So then as I feed them into my sewing machine, I don't have to worry about getting my seam sides wrong. So I'm going to nest my seams together if I can. Not all my points are going to be heading so that that works. And I'm going to sew across here. And I'm going to cut, And then remember, this was my next piece, so I have to rotate it, but this is my seam side, so I know that goes right like this, super easy, and I can feed it right back into the machine, right? And I'm gonna sew it until all of my rows are built, and then I've got 31 in my project of these little 5x5s going, then I'm just gonna join all of those rows. Makes life really easy that way, easy to manage. Then, to build the rest of the quilt, check this out, right? When I use my background, there are no seams in the middle of it. So I had what was 2.5 yards of the brown and 2.5 yards of the blue, 90 inches, right? First of all, you're gonna need 2 cuts of each color, 2.5 inches wide for your binding, so you can go all the way around with your bindings. And I didn't pay any attention to where they landed, I just had fun with it. These strips right in here, however, are 2 inches, and you only need 1 of each color. Then the blue over there is 14 inches, and this brown here is 28 inches. So I'm kind of playing with even dividable numbers for you as well to make a nice quilt. Like I said, finishes about 59 by 89. And then one of the other tricks I did for the machine quilting, I wanted this again to remind me kind of like a fun quilt from like an old cabin or something. And a lot of the quilts that I found from the Heritage didn't have as much quilting as we do now with all of our free motion. So look real careful. It's just really simple straight line quilting. I used blue threads on the brown fabric and I used brown threads on the blue fabric, right? And then what I did early on, I hope you can see okay, I found this major row of color that was running through here. And I just simply laid my ruler on here, and then I started to chalk out my pencil, and then I continued down, and then the distances basically are just the width of the ruler you can see, and I just started marking after I had gone ahead and set that. And I realized, you heard me stumble, right? One of the things I forgot to point out is I have started by doing stitch in the ditch using one of my walking feet, and I did this row from the bottom to the top, and then this row from the top to the bottom. I bounced out and did some machine stitch in the ditch here and here, here and here, and then I drew in my columns. So I left that quilting a little bit wide open, and the reason you can do that is so the quilt itself will be more pliable, have a nicer drape, and be a nice soft quilt to lay on. And again, I just was inspired creating this quilt. It's something I thought you might find in a fun cabin somewhere or something like that. And I love the way the colors came together, and I would love to see if some of you actually make it into a table runner as well as the full-size quilt. And while you're working on that, I'm gonna come up with some more fantastic quilts for us guys in the sewing world. We'll catch you next time at Man Sewing. Thanks for being a Man Sewing fan. It's great to have you out there encouraging me to create fantastic new content. If you've missed any of the videos, we've got links for you here and here. And while you're checking those out, make sure you're subscribed. We don't want you to miss any of the action.